Usually when we talk about a diagnosis, there is this expectation of, well, absolute precision, like engineering.
Right, yeah.
You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line on the black background, and the doctor just points and says, there it is.
Broken or not broken.
Right. It is a clean, binary reality. You look at it, you know the facts, and you move forward.
Yeah, it is comforting. I mean, we like things to be visible, to be neatly categorized and sorted out in these undeniable black and white terms.
Oh, sure.
We want our information to behave like math.
But then you step into the world of ancient language and biblical translation, and suddenly that x-ray machine stops working the way you expect.
Yeah, it really does.
We are looking at a linguistic landscape that is, well, honestly, it is murky. It is alive. It is ancient. So welcome to Reformed Thinking.
Glad to be here.
Today we are taking a deep dive into a stack of highly technical Hebrew lexicons. And I do mean a stack.
Oh, yeah. For anyone who has not spent their weekends browsing seminary libraries, we should probably clarify what a lexicon actually is.
Please do, because when I saw the books you brought into the studio for this, I thought we were building a fort. They are massive.
They really are cinder blocks. A lexicon is basically a dictionary, but it goes way further than just giving you a one-word English equivalent.
Okay, so it is more than just looking up a word on your phone.
Oh, totally. We are looking at the gold standards of the field today. So we have A-Lot, which is the Kohler-Baumgartner lexicon.
Right.
We have BDB, the Brown Driver Briggs. And we have TWOT, the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament.
That is a lot of acronyms.
It is, yeah. But these works, they do not just define words. They trace the entire life cycle of a word.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they show you its roots in other ancient languages like Akkadian or Ugaritic. They log every single time the word appears in the Hebrew Bible.
So they categorize its various nuances based on context, grammar, the historical era, all of that.
Spot on.
So we are looking at the absolute heavyweight champions of translation scholarship here. And our mission today is surprisingly specific.
Very specific.
We are going to unpack a single, tiny, two-letter Hebrew word. The word is add.
Just two letters, ayin and delight.
Right. And I am telling you, by the end of this deep dive, you are going to read your English Bibles with completely fresh eyes. You will start spotting the hidden mechanics of this ancient language.
It changes everything once you see it.
It really does. Because this tiny word constructs the biblical view of limits, time, finality, and this is crazy, it even contains a shocking military double meaning.
What is fascinating here is how ancient Hebrew uses very small words to do massive philosophical lifting.
Yeah.
In English, we have a huge vocabulary to distinguish between time, space, boundaries, eternity, you name it.
We have a word for everything.
Right. But ancient Hebrew operates differently. It uses concrete physical concepts to build a framework for abstract thought.
So it is very grounded.
Extremely grounded. This single word, add, provides the architecture for how the biblical authors understood reality itself.
Okay, let us start on the ground floor then. If I am living in the ancient Near East, how am I using this word on a random Tuesday?
Well, on a random Tuesday, you are using it as a preposition to mark a boundary.
A boundary, okay.
Yeah, in the lexicons, this is the most basic everyday function. It translates to phrases like as far as up to or until.
So we are talking about spatial and temporal boundaries here.
Right. Let us look at the spatial uses first. In Genesis 11.31, the text describes a massive migration.
Okay, yeah, the Terah story.
Terah takes his family, including Abram, and they leave Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But the text says they went as far as Haran and settled there.
And the Hebrew phrase there is ad Haran.
Yes. It marks the geographical limit of their travel.
So it is a literal stopping point on the map.
Precisely. Haran was a major commercial hub in northern Mesopotamia, which was hundreds of miles away from Ur. This was not an afternoon stroll. It was a grueling, life-altering trek.
Right, through the dust and heat.
Yeah, and the word add sets the hard stop. Their trip pushed forward day after day until it hit that specific city wall, and then the forward motion ceased.
I see. It establishes a physical terminus. And it can be vertical too, right? Because I was looking at Psalm 147.6 before we started.
Oh, that is a great example.
Yeah, where it talks about God casting the wicked down to the ground.
Yes. The spatial limit there is the physical earth.
So gravity and divine judgment just pull the wicked downward, and the action continues right up to that specific boundary, the dirt itself, and then stops.
That is it.
I am picturing this word add like a physical tape measure.
Ooh, I like that.
You grab the metal tip, you stretch it out across the room, and you keep pulling until it hits the far wall and locks into a specific notch. That nosh, that stopping point, is the ad.
That is a very helpful way to visualize it. And that tape measure works for time as well.
Like saying, I will work until 5 o'clock.
Totally. Look at Judges 6.31. Joash is defending his son Gideon, who just tore down an altar to Baal.
People were pretty upset about that.
Very upset. Joash tells the angry mob that whoever pleads for Baal shall be put to death until morning.
So the Hebrew there is ad habacor.
Right. It is a temporal boundary. The threat of execution stands active, but only up to the sunrise. The sunrise is the notch on the tape measure.
Okay, that makes sense. Or consider Genesis 33.3, where Jacob is terrified to meet his brother Esau.
After years of estrangement, yeah.
The text says Jacob bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother.
That is a perfect use of the word.
So it is like step, bow, step, bow. The action repeats on a loop, stretching across a span of time and space, but it has a definitive cutoff point. The ad is the moment he is standing face to face with Esau.
The tape measure hits the wall and the bowing sequence is over.
But wait, I have a conceptual question here, because the lexicon spent a lot of ink on this.
Okay, what is it?
If I'm walking toward a city, how does this word differ from just saying, I am going to Haran? The dictionaries make a huge deal out of the distinction between the Hebrew word el, which means towards, and our word ad, which means until or as far as.
Yeah, that distinction is vital for understanding how precise the ancient authors were.
What is the actual difference on the ground?
Well, if we connect this to the broader grammar, the word el signifies motion or direction towards a target.
Okay.
It is about your trajectory. If you are walking El Haran, your face is pointed at Haran. You are on the road heading that way.
Like aiming at a dartboard.
Right. But you might stop halfway. You might get sidetracked or give up or run out of water.
You are aiming at the target, but you haven't necessarily hit it.
Yes. But ad implies actual arrival. It includes the limit itself.
Oh, I see.
If you walk at Haran, you have arrived at the city gates. Your feet are standing on the boundary line. The word guarantees the completion of the action up to the specified limit.
So the tape measure actually reaches the wall. It does not just point at the wall from across the room.
Spot on.
Okay, that makes complete sense for physical space and ticking clocks.
Yeah.
But here is where my mind starts to break a little bit.
Here we go.
If ad means hitting a specific limit, how in the world does this exact same word get used to describe forever? Because if eternity has no limit, how does a boundary word describe it?
This raises one of the most fascinating questions about ancient cognition. We transition here in lexicons to the first noun definition, noun I.
No, I. Okay.
It is defined as lasting future time or perpetuity. The sources list phrases you will recognize instantly from English translations.
Like what?
Well, the phrase larad translates as forever. The phrase olam way translates as for all time or forever and ever.
Oh, we see this applied to God all the time.
Yeah.
Like Isaiah 57.1 phi describes God as the one who is enthroned forever.
Right.
And Psalm 9.19 says, the hope of the afflicted will not perish forever.
And strangely enough, it even gets used for the past.
Really?
Yeah, Job 20.4 says something has been true from of old or from the beginning. The Hebrew phrase there is mini ad.
So the tape measure is stretching infinitely into the future and infinitely into the past.
Yes,
But let me push back on this, because I think modern readers carry a lot of baggage into these verses.
Oh, for sure. We read it through a very Western lens.
Right. When we say forever today, we think of a mathematical infinite. We picture a never-ending line of dominoes falling into an empty void.
Or we think of Greek philosophy, where eternity is this static, frozen state outside of time altogether.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did the ancient Hebrews think of forever like a mathematical infinite?
No, they absolutely did not. The lexical data shows that the root meaning of this word relates to advancing time or duration.
Advancing time.
Yeah, it is not an abstract mathematical concept. The Hebrew mind was highly concrete. They didn't philosophize about sterile, empty voids. They thought in terms of a continuation of existence.
How does that connect to the boundary line, though? I am still stuck on the tape measure.
Think about the spatial meaning we just discussed, arriving at a boundary. When applied to time, the concept is that the boundary just keeps advancing.
Yep.
You reach the horizon and a new horizon appears. You live through this generation and the boundary advances to the next generation. It is a continuous, unbroken pushing forward of reality.
Okay, let me try an analogy here. Instead of thinking about endless time like falling down a bottomless pit, it's more like walking on a treadmill.
Oh, a treadmill. I like that.
The ground keeps appearing under your feet, step by step. You're always hitting a limit, this second, this minute, this day. but the boundary is always moving forward with you. The track just keeps rolling.
That captures the mechanics of the word beautifully. The ad is the limit of today, but tomorrow, the ad moves to encompass tomorrow.
Wow.
This brings us to a massive theological insight found in the work of scholars like Ernst Jenne and Georg Sauer.
The lexicons cite them constantly.
They do, extensively.
What do they point out?
They argue that there is no well-conceived, systematic concept of time and eternity in the Old Testament.
Wait, what?
At least not in the way Western philosophers debate it.
But we spend a massive amount of theological energy debating the mechanics of eternity. We write entire textbooks on how God relates to time.
We do. But the ancient text uses this word differently. Instead of offering a systematic philosophical treatise on the nature of time outside of space, the word ad denotes finality and inalterability.
Inalterability, meaning it cannot be changed.
Right. When you see this word, especially in the Psalms, laments, and prophetic promises, it is declaring that a state of affairs is absolute.
So when Exodus 15.1 says Yahweh will reign forever and ever, it isn't primarily a statement about physics and timelines.
No.
It's a statement about authority.
Yes. Or look at Micah 4.5, which says, "We will walk in the name of Yahweh our God forever and ever." The word "ad" there is locking down the reality. It means the situation cannot be overturned.
It's like a legal contract signed in permanent ink rather than a ticking clock in a sterile room.
A contract in permanent ink, that is good.
It is a declaration about a sovereign decree. The ink is dry. The decree is absolute. No rival king is going to show up tomorrow and vote God off the throne. The boundary of his rule advances into every new tomorrow, completely uncontested.
That is the perfect way to articulate it. And the lexicons highlight a sharp contrast in the biblical poetry to drive this home.
What kind of contrast?
They point to the eternal duration of creation compared to the frailty of humanity.
Oh, okay.
Habakkuk 3.6 speaks of the everlasting mountains. Mountains represent something massive, unmovable, and permanent. But then look at Job 20.5.
Let me pull that up. Okay, Job 20.5 says, "The exulting of the wicked is short, and the joy of the godless lasts but a moment."
Do you know what Hebrew word is used there for a moment?
Is it ad?
It is.
No way.
Yes. The text uses our word, but shrinks the limit down to a fraction of a second.
Wow. So you have the permanent ink of God's advancing rule,
Yeah.
the massive duration of the mountains, and the vanishing vapor of human boasting, all measured by the exact same conceptual tape measure.
That is staggering, isn't it?
It really is. The word scales from the majesty of God all the way down to the pathetic brevity of human pride.
Right.
So if we pause here for a second, what does this mean for you, the person listening to this right now?
A very practical takeaway.
Yeah. When you read a psalm and it says God's steadfast love endures forever, the text is not just asking you to imagine a really long time. It is telling you that this reality is unalterable. You can lean your entire weight against it, and the boundary will not break. His decree holds you and advances forward with you into whatever tomorrow brings.
That is the theological payoff of this lexical data. The limit is secure. The boundary of God's character will never recede.
It is a huge comfort.
It is. But as beautiful as that is, we need to follow the lexicons into a completely different, much rougher territory now.
Oh, right. We have to look at the etymological roots of this word.
Yes. This is where the deep dive takes a sudden, really fascinating pivot.
I was reading through the notes before we started recording, and I honestly thought there was a typo in the research.
It is jarring.
If the core concept of the word is to advance, as we just established with the treadmill of time, what happens when you advance on an enemy instead of advancing through the calendar?
You find the second distinct noun root in the dictionaries. Noun the second. Okay.
And it translates to booty or prey.
Booty, prey, like the spoils of war.
Yeah.
That is a massive shift from unalterable eternity. You are talking about battlefield plunder.
Yes, the lexicons list, verses like Genesis 49.27, where the tribe of Benjamin is described as a ravenous wolf, devouring the prey in the morning and dividing the spoil at evening. The word for prey there is ad.
That is intense.
Or consider Isaiah 33.23, which speaks of a time when the blind will divide a great spoil or prey. Zephaniah 3.8 talks about God rising up to the prey. They're using the exact same two letters, the identical spelling.
How in the world do these concepts connect? I mean, how does the tape measure of time become the plunder of a conquered city?
Well, if we look at the linguistic root, the underlying verb is dh.
Date.
Yeah, that verb means to pass over, to go on, or to advance upon.
To advance upon.
This demonstrates how physical military concepts share DNA with abstract concepts of time in biblical Hebrew. Advancing through the years and advancing on a battlefield spring from the same linguistic soil. So when a predator advances on an animal, or an army advances on a target, they are crossing a boundary line. They overtake the limit, they crush the resistance, and they take the spoil.
Exact. I mean, yes, that is it. The forward momentum doesn't just mark time, it marks conquest.
So you stretch the tape measure into enemy territory, and whatever it touches belongs to you.
Right.
That is wild. It takes this serene concept of eternity and injects it with this gritty, ancient, Near East military reality. But it immediately makes me wonder.
I think I know what you're going to ask.
If the word for eternity and the word for battlefield plunder look identical on the scroll, how do translators determine which version of the word is being used in a sentence?
Context determines the translation, but you are right to ask because sometimes the context allows for more than one reading and scholars fiercely disagree.
Oh, this sets up one of those famous textual controversies in the Hebrew Bible.
It really does.
Okay, I know where we are going with this. We are looking at Isaiah 9.5. If you have ever listened to Handel's Messiah during the holidays, you know this verse by heart.
Oh, absolutely.
For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. We are focusing on that third title, Everlasting Father.
Yes. In the original Hebrew, that specific title is Abi-Ad.
Abi-Ad.
Traditionally, for centuries, this has been translated as Everlasting Father or Father from Eternity.
So this falls firmly under noun the first.
Right, utilizing the concept of advancing time and perpetuity we discussed earlier.
But the source material notes that several prominent biblical scholars, specifically Bernhard Doom and Georg Fohr, push back on this.
They do, yeah.
They argue it should be translated using noun the second. Instead of Everlasting Father, they argue it should read Father of the booty, owner of the booty, or distributor of booty.
It sounds totally jarring to modern ears, but we need to impartially break down the arguments for both sides here. The debate showcases the incredible weight resting on a single ancient word, and it shows why lexicons are so vital.
So why would they argue for distributor of booty?
Well, those who argue for it point to the microcontext of Isaiah 9.
What do you mean by microcontext?
The verses immediately surrounding this famous list of titles, Isaiah 9 is drenched in military imagery.
Okay, lay it out for us.
It describes a great light shining on people living in deep darkness, which was often the reality of a conquered people. Then it talks about the yoke of their burden and the rod of their oppressor being shattered.
Like in the day of Midian, which was a famous military victory.
Right. And verse 4 explicitly mentions the boots of tramping warriors and garments rolled in blood, which are destined to be burned as fuel for the fire.
So the immediate setting is a battlefield. After a massive bloody conflict, the enemy has been destroyed.
Yes. And in that ancient Near East context, what does a victorious king do after the battle?
He takes the loot.
He gathers the spoils of war, the wealth, the livestock, the resources of the defeated enemy, and he acts as a father to his people by distributing that wealth to them.
Oh, I see.
A king who provides for his citizens from the plunder of their oppressors fits the gritty imagery of Isaiah 9 perfectly. He is the father or owner of the spoils.
That actually makes a lot of sense when you read it chronologically. The boots are burned, the battle is won, and the king distributes the prey.
It holds together structurally.
But on the other hand, the traditional translation, Everlasting Father, fits the macro context, the grand messianic trajectory of the entire passage.
Right. Explain how you see that macro context operating.
Well, look at the other titles in the list. This child is called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, and Prince of Peace.
Huge titles.
Those are cosmic divine titles. Mighty God elevates this figure far beyond a standard human king dividing up captured sheep. An eternal, final, unalterable fatherhood noun aligns with a ruler who brings unending peace. If his government has no end, as the next verse says, then his fatherhood must also have no end.
Both sides have incredibly strong arguments. The traditional view looks at the macro context of the theology being presented, recognizing the divine attributes assigned to the Messiah.
Right.
The alternative view looks at the micro context of the surrounding battle imagery and the socio-historical expectations of ancient kingship.
It is like reading the English word tear in a handwritten letter.
Oh, good analogy.
Let's say the sentence says, I could not stop the tear. Are they crying a tear down their cheek because they are overwhelmed with sadness, or are they tearing the paper in half because they are furiously angry?
You don't know without more context.
Right, context is everything. But sometimes the context allows for two drastically different readings. You can be crying while writing or ripping
Right.
what you wrote. The letters on the page are identical.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the challenge translators face every single day. And, we're not here to settle the debate for the scholars or rewrite Handel's Messiah.
Definitely not.
We are simply showcasing how the mechanics of this language operate. The line between eternal peace and the violent spoils of war is drawn by the exact same two letters, holding tensions that require intense study to figure out.
Okay, let's leave the battlefield and unpack this from a different angle. We're going to return to the prepositional use of add, but we're looking at how it functions to describe extreme human experiences.
Yeah, the lexicons show that this word is used to express measure or degree.
So when the biblical authors want to push a concept to its absolute limit, they deploy this word.
Yes, we see phrases like admad, which means exceedingly or up to an extreme degree.
Like when someone says they're exceedingly joyful or exceedingly angry.
Right. Or look at Malachi 3.10, where God challenges the people to bring the full tithe into the storehouse.
I know this one.
He says, "Test me in this, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it." The Hebrew phrase for that extreme blessing is ad belly day.
Ad belly day. What is the literal translation of that?
It translates roughly as to excess or until there is no more need.
Wow.
The boundary of human necessity is completely overrun by the provision.
I think of this like a volume dial on a stereo system.
A volume dial, yeah.
You don't just turn it up to a comfortable listening level. You turn the dial all the way to 11.
Hmm.
You crank it until the plastic knob breaks off in your hand.
That is a great image.
The word add represents hitting the absolute ceiling of a given reality.
The volume dial is a great way to picture it. And it can be turned all the way down, too, creating a negative limit.
Like in Judges 4.16.
Yes.
The commander Barak pursues the enemy army of Sisera, and the text says all the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword. Not even one survived.
The Hebrew there uses add to create that absolute zero. Low, that ahead. It means the destruction went right up to the boundary of the very last person and included them.
The dial was turned to zero, leaving nothing.
Leaving nothing.
I want to look at another example of this volume dial being cranked because it brings in some fascinating socioeconomic context.
Oh, this one is sobering.
It is. Look at Isaiah 5.8. The prophet is delivering a series of woes or judgments against the nation. He says, "Woe to those who join house to house, who add field to field, until there is no more room, and you are made to dwell alone in the midst of the land."
The phrase for "until there is no more room" is adifes makum. The spatial extreme is reached.
But let's talk about why hitting this boundary is such a severe prophetic critique.
Okay, walk us through it.
In ancient Israel, land was tied to your tribal inheritance. It was given by God, and it was meant to stay in the family. You couldn't just permanently sell your ancestral farm. It was supposed to revert back in the year of Jubilee.
Right, it was a built-in safety net.
But during Isaiah's time, you had these wealthy elites, these land monopolists, exploiting the poor. They would foreclose on debts, seize the small family farms, and combine them into massive, sprawling estates.
They were systematically dismantling the economic system established by the Torah.
Exactly. I mean, yes, for sure. And Isaiah uses our word add to describe the absolute greed of this process. They buy up houses and add field to field at Ephes Makom until the boundary of the land is completely consumed by their monopoly.
They pushed it to the absolute limit.
They cranked the dial of greed until the societal boundary broke, leaving no place for the poor to live. They pushed the limit way too far.
And that is why the prophetic judgment falls so heavily upon them. They weaponized the limit.
That is a great way to put it.
If we connect this to the broader function of the word, add acts as an ultimate benchmark. It is the standard against which things are measured.
Okay, give us an example.
We see this explicitly in genealogical records like 1 Chronicles 4.27.
What happens there?
The text is making a comparison between different families and their population growth. It mentions a man named Shimei who had 16 sons and 6 daughters, but his brothers did not have many children.
Okay.
The text says their entire family did not multiply at the degree of the children of Judah.
So it means up to the degree of or like?
Yes. The children of Judah are the boundary marker, the maximum limit on the chart of population growth. The other family's growth is measured against that line, and they did not reach it. The word establishes the ceiling.
So whether it is the maximum amount of divine blessing, the maximum amount of military destruction, the maximum amount of land a corrupt elite can hoard, or the maximum size of a family, the word add sets the ceiling. You hit the roof.
We have covered space, time, battlefields, and extreme measurements.
It is a lot of ground.
It is. To round out our analysis of the lexicons, we need to look at a closely related word that shares the spelling and the conceptual DNA.
Okay.
It brings the idea of a limit into a completely different sphere. The courtroom.
This might be my favorite part of the research.
It is so good.
We are talking about the noun ed. Same consonants, slightly different pronunciation. It translates as witness or testimony. We are talking about legal evidence.
Yes. And what is critical to understand here is that a witness in the ancient Near Eastern context establishes a legal boundary. A testimony finalizes a matter.
It sets a limit on what can be disputed.
Right. When a witness speaks, the debate hits a wall.
The sources point out something fascinating about this, though. This concept of bearing witness doesn't just apply to human beings standing up in a trial.
No, it doesn't.
It applies to inanimate objects serving as evidence.
Give the listeners an example of how that works.
Okay, in Genesis 31, Jacob has secretly fled from his father-in-law Laban. Laban chases him down. They have this massive confrontation, but eventually they decide to make a peace treaty.
A tense peace treaty.
Very tense. They make a covenant not to cross over into each other's territory to do harm. In verse 44, Laban says, "Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me."
And how do they solidify that witness?
They take stones. Jacob sets up a pillar, and they gather a heap of stones, and they eat a covenant meal right there on the rock pile. Laban explicitly calls the pile of stones a witness.
A literal pile of rocks is the witness.
That physical rock pile is the ed. It stands on the boundary line between their territories, quite literally marking the spatial limit, but it also marks the legal limit. The rocks are the testimony.
The boundary line itself is the evidence. This brings us to a specific textual mystery in the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 8.
Okay.
This is where the concepts of eternity and evidence collide.
Set the stage for this verse. What is happening?
Isaiah is told by God to go and write down a prophecy of judgment against the rebellious people. The original Hebrew text, known as the Masoretic text, instructs the prophet to write it on a tablet and inscribe it in a book, la'od.
La'od.
Now, based on our earlier discussion, what does la'od mean?
It falls under noun I. It means forever. Write it in a book forever.
Correct. But the sources note that many modern scholars suggest amending this text to read le'oled.
Le'oled, okay.
They suggest changing the vowels so that instead of saying write it in a book forever, it says write it in a book for a witness.
Okay, we need to explain what a textual emendation is, because I don't want anyone listening to think scholars are just crossing out words they don't like in the Bible.
Oh, far from it. In the original Hebrew script, only the consonants were written down. The vowels were not recorded, they were passed down orally.
Right.
It wasn't until much later, primarily between the 6th and 10th centuries AD, that Jewish scribes known as the Masoretes added vowel markings.
Those little dots and dashes.
Yes, around the consonants to permanently preserve the pronunciation.
So in Isaiah 30.8, the original consonants written on the scroll for forever and witness are absolutely identical.
Yes, they are the exact same letters. An emendation happens when a scholar looks at the grammar and the context and suggests that the later scribes might have supplied the wrong vowel markings.
So the scholar looks at Isaiah being told to write down a prophecy and says, writing something in a book as a legal witness makes more sense in a judicial context than writing something in a book forever.
Right, because the very act of writing it down on a physical tablet is to produce hard evidence against the rebellious nation.
Precisely. And conceptually, writing something in a book forever is practically identical to writing something in a book as a permanent witness. The purpose of the permanent record is to bear testimony.
They overlap so cleanly.
I have to ask a hard question here, though, playing the skeptic.
Go for it.
Does this level of scholarly tweaking make the biblical text seem less reliable? If academics can just come along centuries later and argue we should change the vowels to make it say witness instead of forever, does the ground start shifting under our feet? I mean, how do we know what it actually says?
This raises a vital question for anyone reading the text, and it's a completely natural fear. But the reality is quite the opposite.
How so?
This level of intense scrutiny actually demonstrates the absolute care given to preserving the material. The scholars are not inventing new words, they are analyzing the exact transmission of the letters over millennia. We know the consonants have been preserved with astonishing accuracy.
So the foundation is solid.
The foundation is incredibly solid, and in this specific case, the core theological meaning, permanence, and evidence remains completely intact either way.
Right, the meaning doesn't change.
Whether it is written forever or written as a witness, the theological claim is that God's word is final. It is documented, it is unalterable, and it stands as a boundary line that cannot be crossed.
The tape measure is locked. The permanent ink of the decree is dry. The pile of stones is sitting right there on the border, defying anyone to argue with it.
That is it.
That is incredibly reassuring. It speaks to a sovereign author who does not stutter.
It provides an architecture of certainty in a chaotic world.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started with the literal physical tape measure of spatial boundaries, walking all the way across the ancient Near East to the city gates of Haran. We look at the philosophical concept of advancing eternity, realizing that God's forever is not a static, empty void.
It is a constant advancing presence rolling like a treadmill into tomorrow.
Then we walked onto ancient battlefields to see a conquering king distributing the spoils of war to his people. We turned the volume dial all the way up to 11 with extreme measurements of blessing and destruction. And we ended in an ancient courtroom looking at inanimate piles of rocks standing as permanent, undeniable witnesses.
It all comes back to how a single concept, the limit, shapes our understanding of reality.
It is mind-blowing.
But before we finish, I want to leave you with one final unmentioned connection from the text that ties all of this together.
Okay, lay it on us.
In the source material, there is a sudden shift when it discusses the book of Daniel. The lexicons provide the Chaldaic or Aramaic equivalent of our word add.
Why Aramaic?
Well, because when the ancient Israelites were conquered and taken into exile in Babylon, their entire geopolitical world collapsed. Jerusalem was destroyed, the temple was burned, the unalterable promises of God seemed to have been completely shattered.
Yeah, everything was gone.
And in that exile, their language began to shift from Hebrew to Aramaic, the language of their captors.
So they were living in a foreign land, speaking a foreign tongue, trying to hold on to their identity while surrounded by the gods of Babylon.
Yes. And Daniel, writing from the heart of that exile, uses the Aramaic add to talk about lions' dens and the limits of Babylonian kings and the kingdom of God.
Wow.
I pose this thought for you to mull over. What happens to your personal concept of forever and security when your entire world collapses?
That is a tough question.
When the walls you thought were permanent are torn down, and you are forced to describe the eternity of your God using the language of the people who just destroyed your home.
That is a staggering thought.
Does the boundary break? Or does it prove that God's forever supersedes human language entirely?
The boundary does not break. It just advances into the exile right alongside them. The tape measure stretches all the way from the ruins of Jerusalem to the streets of Babylon, and God is already standing there at the limit, waiting for them. You know, we started by comparing this to a medical x-ray.
We did, yeah.
We look at the ancient text expecting clean, jagged white lines that we can easily categorize. But instead of a static picture of a broken bone, we found something living. We found a word that advances, that conquers, that stands as an unyielding witness, and that holds the line when the rest of the world falls apart. The ink is permanent. The boundary is secure.